So I've wanted to get on and start filming this vlog for a few days now, but I've not been very well, and today, even though I'm still not feeling very well, I felt like I could film, but I didn't necessarily want to be up in my craft room and get dressed. So we're here on my sofa. I'm in my pyjamas, I'm wearing a Christmas hoodie, and despite the fact that I don't feel well, we're going to have a go at filming a vlog. So in my first spinning vlog, I unboxed my e-spinner and we had a go, and I had my first attempt at spinning, and then I showed you sort of my first few skeins of yarn that I'd made over the first few days. So it's been almost 2 weeks since I filmed that video now, and I've been spinning on and off since then, but I've not created any yarn specifically for a project. That's what we're going to do in today's video. We're going to turn this ball of fluff into a pair of mittens for me. All of the gloves I've got are either thin or fingerless, and when it snowed a few weeks ago, that was not what I wanted to wear. So let's talk a little bit about the fibre that I've chosen for this project. So this fibre is called Dusty Raven Berry, and it's from World of Wool. It's a blend of 50% merino, 25% baby alpaca, 12.5% blueface Leicester, and 12.5% woolen viscose neps. So as you can see, it's a blended top with these black neps in it, and there's shots of like a rusty orange and some red through the white there. It is lovely and squishy and soft, and I think this is going to make some really beautiful mittens. So we're going to have a go at turning this fibre into, I'm hoping, a DK weight 2-ply yarn using my e-spinner. The spins that I've done up until this point, I'll put some on the screen, have been fairly chunky apart from my first couple of attempts that were about a 4-ply or fingering weight. So more recently I've been doing sort of chunky weight yarns for practices, but these were sort of unintentional. I was just spinning to whatever I felt the fibre should be. So we're going to have a go at actually trying to spin something to a particular weight today. I think DK is probably approachable for me. It won't take me too long to knit, but it means the mittens won't be too chunky. And also, like, DK is usually 2 fingering weight yarns held together, and I know fingering weight yarn sort of width quite well, so I'm hoping I can spin my singles to that. I'm planning on these being knitted mittens rather than crochet mittens. So that means I'm going to spin my singles on a Z twist and ply on an S twist, because I believe that's what's best for knitting. So yeah, let's break this piece of fibre in half because we're doing a 2-ply. So I'll spin 1/2 on one bobbin and 1/2 on the other and then ply them together. So yeah, let's break this down into 2 pieces. So that didn't go very well. It broke up into pieces, but I have got roughly 2 equal sized pieces. I think I forgot to say I've got 100 grams of this, so hopefully each of these is 50 grams. So yeah, I'll get my e-spinner turned on and we'll get spinning. Okay, what I might do is actually split this in half again, because I'm pretty bad at like spinning from something that's this wide. I'm sure there's a trick to it that I haven't learned yet, but I think I'm going to need to split this in half again for this spin. Again, I'm still a beginner. I think I've done, they're all hanging up behind me, but I've got 1, 2, 3, I think I've got about 4 100-gram skeins of practice under my belt now, but I'm still very, very much a beginner. So yeah, we're going to split this in half. Make my life a little bit easier. So yeah, I apologise for the lighting in this video as well. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but we're in December, and the lighting isn't amazing right now, but this is kind of the best I can do in terms of natural lighting. So I've just hooked my fibre onto my leader here, and then yeah, we're going to start spinning, and hopefully I can get the weight yarn that I want. Usually takes me a little bit of time to kind of get, when I'm starting a new fibre, to get used to drafting it and the sort of the drafting length. Okay, this is going a bit fast, and this is not drafting the same as the other fibres that I've done. So right, yeah, let's try drafting this without it going, because I kind of need, I probably should have pulled out a bit at the end to see what the staple length is. I could do that now. let's do that. Let's pull a bit off the end and have a look. It is about the same as what I've been spinning. I'm not quite sure why I'm having trouble drafting it. Maybe it's camera nerves. So let's turn this on and we'll see. We'll see if we can get it to the right. That's now too thin. I just need to get into my rhythm. I've had this with the other ones as well. It's my first metre or so is usually a bit uneven as I kind of get used to the fibre and kind of how thick I want it to be. There we are. I think I'm there now. It is definitely not got a lot of twist. So that's about, I would say, a light fingering width, like if it was a finished yarn. So let's do a ply back test. So ply back test is where you just take your single and you let it, oh, it does not want to focus there, and you let it kind of curl up in on itself to see. This is still a bit thick and thin though. It's lovely and soft. I think that's probably about what I want. So we're just gonna spin and we'll just see where it takes. If it ends up a bit thinner or a bit chunkier than I wanted, I can work with that. I haven't picked a specific pattern because there are so many like mitten patterns out there. Right, let's give it a go then and do some more spinning. So I've been spinning away. This is kind of how far I've gotten. And I just wanted to show you. So this yarn has tweedy neps in it, if it wants to focus, tweedy neps in it. I'm finding them really difficult to spin. I'm finding as I'm spinning them, it's going really, really thick. And then just after it's going really, really thin. So I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with this. This is the second, I think, tweedy yarn I've spun. The last one was a lot easier to spin than this. So yeah, if anyone has any tips on spinning neps, please drop them in the comments, because this yarn is going to end up all lumpy and bumpy. If I leave these bits in, I'm just going to like pull this bit out and rejoin my fibre. You see, this sort of nep I don't mind. It's the really big fat ones that annoy me, but this one, this little bit here is fine. That'll just give the knitting some texture. Hello, beautiful girl. And I go back to spinning now. Or is it cuddle time? Have we decided that it's cuddle time and not spinning time? Hey? No, don't eat! She's eating! She's eating! She's eating my spinning fibre. Let me move all of this out of the range of your mouth and we'll go back to spinning. Yeah? So it's been about an hour and a half, I think it took me, and I've done the first half of that 100 grams fibre. So this is 50 grams spun up into singles. And as you can see all those black tweedy bits? Oh my goodness, they are quite difficult to spin up. But I quite like how the fibre was quite stripy, and then with the red and the orange and the black and the white, and now it's spun up, it's a lot more blended, but you can still kind of see those stripes in there. And because there's quite a lot of red and white in this, it's come out quite pink, which the fibre didn't look pink, but now it kind of looks like a dusty pink, which I love pink. And it's also crazy how, so this is the other half of my bundle of fibre. So it's crazy how this big bundle of fibre, once it's spun up and has all the air taken out of it, that turns into that. It's kind of cool. So yeah, I'm going to put another bobbin on my spinner and spin up the other half, and then I'll come back to you once I'm ready to ply. So it's the next day, and last night I managed to finish off spinning the other half of that fibre onto a second bobbin, and here they both are. on my Lazy Kate. I'm loving how these are looking. I can't wait to see them plied together. So today's jobs are, we're going to ply these together. I've got my e-spinner out again. Then once they're plied, I'm going to use my Niddy Noddy to wind it into a hank, and then we're going to give the yarn a bath and set the twist and then hang it in front of the fire to dry. I haven't lit the fire yet, but I will do once the yarn is having a bath. So yeah, let's get plying. So I've just set my e-spinner to S twist, and then I'm going to hook both of those plies of singles into my leader. Got a little loop at the end of my leader to put them into. So I'm just letting a twist build up, and then we'll start plying. I showed how I ply the yarn in detail in the last vlog, so I won't sort of explain what I'm doing too much. But essentially I pull up the yarn from a Lazy K, and then I let the twist travel up, and then I let it wind onto the bobbin. So I thought a top-down view might be helpful to see what I'm doing. So I'm letting the yarn travel up into the bobbin whilst pulling up the next yarn, and then I've got quite a lot of tension between my two hands here, and I let the twist travel up there, and then I let it wind back on the bobbin as I'm pulling up more from the Lazy Kate. So I let the twist travel up, then I let it wind onto the bobbin. So yeah, I'll continue plying these and I will show you what it looks like at the end. So I'm almost at the end of the plying, and I've got just a little bit left on one of the bobbins, so I'm going to do something called a plying bracelet. I thought you might like to see. I know there was someone that commented on my last spinning vlog that they liked that I showed kind of everything that I was doing, so we're going to continue on with that. So if you can see here, here is my leader, and that's where sort of my yarns run out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap my yarn just below the leader, and then I'm going to try and I will come back and kind of join a second ply to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind this the yarn that's left on this bobbin around my hand in a particular way that means I can ply from both ends. So if you're not sure what that means, I'll kind of show you. So the first thing I do is I kind of wrap the yarn. So here is the yarn that's plied, and that's where I broke the yarn there. So I'm going to wrap it just around my thumb once just to hold it in place. And then I take this end, I'll move up a bit so it's not trying to focus on my face, and I'm going to wrap it up loosely over my middle finger and then round the back of my hand. And I'm going to wrap it to the front, over my middle finger, and then around the back of my hand. If you're interested in this technique, it's called a plying bracelet. I'll pop a video linked down in the description of where I learnt it from. And basically I'm going to do this until I get to the end of my yarn. I think this is the one I started with because this last bit was really, really thick and thin, so I might snap it a bit early to get rid of that sort of first, maybe ½ metre or so of when I just started. So I've got this broken end now, and I've got all this yarn wrapped around my hand. So I'm going to take all those yarn wraps off of my middle finger, and this is why you need to do it loosely, because otherwise this bit can be quite hard and you can cut off the blood supply. So can you see there's like this little nub here, so that stops the yarn all tangling up on itself. And then if I take those loops off my thumb, I can then put it around my wrist, and then that means I can ply like this and unwind it from my hand like this as I go. It's such a cool technique. So yeah, and then to kind of join where I broke it, I try to kind of felt the ends together a little bit. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but that's kind of what I've done before. So I take my two broken ends and I add a little bit, and then I rub them until they felt together. So then what I do is there's already some twist built up in it, so I let it travel up past that bit I've just rubbed and felted to kind of lock it into place. If it wants to do that, it does not want to do that. So it doesn't want to travel, which is not good. So we're just going to start spinning basically, and this bit will probably end up in my swatch anyway. so I'm not too worried about there being like a big bit where I felted it. So if I tilt you down, so then I'll try and show you here how I'm kind of doing the plying bracelet. So I'm unwrapping the wraps from my hand and then letting the twist travel up. Unwrapping it from my hand and letting the twist travel up. Letting it roll off my hand and letting the twist travel up. This bit is definitely thinner than the bits I've been plying up until now, so this might not be the best bit to use for my swatch, but never mind. And then I've got to the end of my plying bracelet, and I've literally just got a loop of yarn on my finger here. I'm just going to let it go into the machine. Okie dokie, so here is my bobbin of plied yarn. As you can see, if I pull it out, it is a slightly overspun, I think. Again, it's kind of untwisting as it goes. But we're now going to measure the diameter of this, and because yarn has such a thin diameter, by measuring the diameter, I mean, is this a DK weight yarn? Is it a sport weight yarn? Is it chunky weight yarn? We're going to work out what weight yarn it is, and that's basically how thick it is, so what the diameter is. And because it's so small to measure, what we do is something called wraps per inch. So I've got this tool, there's lots of them out there. I think this one is from the Wood Store UK, who kindly stock the plywood shade cards for my crochet alongs. So yeah, this is from Wood Store UK, and as you can see, it's got some markings with the names of the different weights of yarn, but it's also got this bit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap our yarn around here, and it will tell me how many wraps per inch this is. So let's do that. So the other thing to say is, while I'm doing this, we're going to wet this yarn to set the twist, and that can sometimes change the weight of the yarn and the meterage, so we will need to do this again once the yarn has dried. But I'm curious to know if I've ended up with a DK weight yarn or not. From feel, I think it might be Aran. If you're in America, that's what you call worsted over there. So yeah, that doesn't really fit. So we've got, or maybe it does actually, there is still space there. Yeah. So as you can see, I've wrapped it round in this bit, which is an inch, so now I can count how many strands are across it. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So let's have a look. I'm going to unwrap it, and then it tells me how many wraps per inch this is. So yeah, if you can see here, it's actually in the worsted stroke Aran section, 11 wraps per inch. Whereas DK is 12 to 14 wraps per inch. So I've actually made an Aran weight yarn. At least I didn't make a chunky weight yarn, which is what I've been spinning recently, and I've not made something that's too small. So I'm all right with the fact that it's Aran. It's a little bit thick and thin, so I can definitely knit it on a DK weight gauge, I think. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with this yarn. Yeah, I think it looks really lovely. I think it's going to be nice to knit up as well. It's definitely, the colours have become a lot more blended from spinning it than I thought they were going to. I thought it was going to end up reasonably with like chunks of colour. Right, let's now wind it onto this. This is called a Niddy Noddy, and this creates a hank of yarn so that I can soak it and we can twist it into a hank. So with the Niddy Noddy, we kind of wrap it up around this, and one wrap across the whole Niddy Noddy is 1.5 meters. This is the Ashford standard Niddy Noddy. So I should be able to work out approximately what my meterage is as well, but that, again, that might change when we give it a bath in a few minutes. But yeah, let's wind it up first. So my Niddy Noddy stays in my the bag for my e-spinner. So it's flat like this, so I just have to turn it. Oh, that was a bit squeaky. So I turn it so these are at like a 90-degree angle. So I take the end of the yarn. I'm trying not to get my face in it so that it actually focuses on what I'm doing and not my face, because I've got autofocus on. So yeah, I'm going to take my yarn and I just tie it in a knot around the centre bit, just to kind of hold it in place whilst I'm winding this hank. So yeah, so that's knotted on now. And then we kind of wind it up and over these in a particular way. So if I lay back a bit, hopefully I'll be able to show you all of it. So I'm going up over that bit there, and then up at the top. down this side and then up over the top. And then, yeah. So I'm kind of going around like that. So I'm creating a big loop, but it's kind of like a folded over loop like this. And then I just keep doing this until I run out of yarn. So here it is all wrapped around the Niddy Noddy, and I've just counted how many strands of yarn I've got, and I've got 84. So that means that I have made 84 times 1.5 is 126 meters of Aran weight yarn, which I'm hoping will be enough for a pair of gloves. I'm not sure if it is. If it's not, and maybe do a contrast cuff. We'll see how we go. Anyway, so to finish this off before we give it a bath, we need to kind of like secure it. So we're taking the two ends, so I've got my two ends here, and what we do is we tie a knot with them. So if I bring this bit to the camera, so I'm going to stick my finger through the middle there. I'm going to take this end here and hold it like this, and I'm going to pull it through that gap. I'm not showing this very well, it's quite hard to show, to be honest. So I'm kind of making a figure 8 wrap. If you've ever undone like a hank of yarn before, you'll be familiar with what this looks like. So I'll just do it, tie the knot, and then I'll show you it. I think it's hard, it's too hard to show you it, like it's too fiddly, and the Niddy Noddy is too unwieldy to show you. So I'm hoping you can see now what I've done. So that is like a figure 8 loop of yarn, and then I've tied it back on itself here just to hold that together. And then I'm going to do the same with the other end as well. Right, so I've done the same with the other end, and then now it's time to take it off the Niddy Noddy. So there we have our yarn. I'll just quickly tie it into a hank so we can have a look at it up close before I give it its bath. So here is my hank of yarn. I'm quite chuffed with that. I'm really chuffed with that, actually, like how this yarn's come out. It's not my most even spin. I've definitely done more even spins, because I think it just, those tweedy neps, they were hard to spin. But yeah, so far so good. This is going quite well, touch wood. So next steps for my hank of yarn. I am going to soak this in just plain warm water, no soap, for around about half an hour. Whilst that's soaking, I'm going to light our log burner because it is freezing in here, and it will help this dry quicker. And then I'll leave this to dry. From my other skeins of yarn, it takes about 48 hours for the yarn to dry. And then I will come back and we'll do some swatching and pick a pattern for these mittens. So now this has had a bath, I'm going to do something called thwacking, I believe, and there's two ways of doing it. You can literally hold it like this and like whack it on something hard and that fluffs up the fibres and that gives you a fluffier yarn, or you can snap it, which is what I'm going to do, which kind of makes all the fibres line up and it gives you a smoother yarn. So we're going to do that. Okay, so basically I put my two hands like this and I just go like that, and then I move around slightly and do it again.
And just keep going all the way around until I've done like a 360. And apparently that just helps all the fibres line up and helps set the twist. So now it's time to hang it to dry.
So my yarn is dry and it's definitely puffed up quite a bit in the drying process, which I was expecting. I've just rewound this on my Niddy Noddy and we've only got 105 meters of yarn, and I redid my wraps to inch test and we're on between 9 and 10 wraps per inch because it's a little bit thick and thin. So we're definitely in the worsted Aran category and not DK weight category. And I'm a bit worried about my meterage because I've been looking at worsted weight patterns this morning and they all seem to need about 150 meters and we've got like 105 to 110. So I'm kind of concerned we're going to be running out of yarn. So I've made the decision to do a contrast cuff, but I want to stick with the handspun theme. So I think I'm going to use this for the contrast cuff. This was the first 100 gram skein that I span up. It's a merino bamboo blend from World of Wool again called Bonnie B. And it's kind of like this red and orange colour with these flecks of white. And I think that they pair together quite well even though the fibre content's quite different. So yeah, I was originally thinking of crocheting this into some fingerless mitts, but maybe these two together would work quite well, I think. So yeah, I'm thinking currently to do the cuff of the mittens in the reds and the main bulk of the mittens in this, but I suppose I could stripe between them if meterage is like seriously an issue. The only thing is, this is obviously one of my earlier spins, and it's, if you can see, it's quite thick and thin. When I showed this in the last vlog, there were some overspun bits and I had to like wind it by hand and unwrap some of those overspun sections. This is also runs a little thinner than this, but I'm hoping it'll work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wind both of these into a ball with my Swift and yarn winder. And then I'm just going to pick a pattern and start knitting. I probably should do a gauge swatch, but I'm going to live on the edge. Why not? It'll work out. If the mittens end up too small or too big, I can always gift them to somebody and then knit myself some that are in the proper size. So yeah, let's wind these into centre pull balls. So here is my cake of yarn. My cakes are coming out quite messy at the minute because I've got a very old, very cheap yarn ball winder. I think it cost me like £10 like 10 years ago. So like the metal's gone a bit tarnished and it slips when I'm winding yarn. So I really need to invest in a new ball winder. If you have any suggestions, drop them in the comments. So I know I said I wasn't going to knit a swatch. I'm going to kind of knit a swatch. I'll explain. So the pattern that I'm thinking of knitting, I didn't want just plain stockinette mittens. I wanted something with maybe like a little cable or some sort of texture. So I've gone for a pattern called Marlene's Mittens by Elena Privet, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. I'll link it down below. And for that pattern, around the hand part, it's 30 stitches on 5mm needles. Figured if I did a swatch that was 15 stitches in this broken rib stitch pattern that is the texture on the mittens, that fits across the widest part of my hand here, then that means the mitten will probably fit me. And I kind of want them to be a little snug so that they've got a little bit of room to grow when I block them. But I have problems with like store-bought gloves are too small for me, ladies ones usually. My hands are a little bit bigger than average. When I used to work in healthcare, I can't remember what size glove I was, but I was definitely a large and not a medium. So I think that we're going to err on the side of these mittens being slightly too big for me and slightly too small for me, if that makes sense, because that's kind of the problem I always come up against. So yeah, we've got to leave in half an hour for an appointment, so I'm going to try and knit up this swatch now. So this is as far as I'm going to take my swatch, because I've already kind of learnt what I needed to learn from it. So if I bring it right up close, hopefully you'll be able to see that broken rib texture. I like broken rib. In fact, this cardigan has a broken rib button band that I added that wasn't in the pattern. So yeah, anyways, not talking about the cardigan, talking about the mittens. So what I've learned from this little swatch is oh my goodness, this fibre is a dream to knit with. It is so soft. I need to spin and knit with some more alpaca blends. It's just, it's so dreamy. And the other thing that I've learned is I think I need to go down at needle size. So I ended up casting on 17 stitches just in case it curled, which it didn't. And then if I hold it up with my hand, can you see how it's wider than my hand over here? It's also, I feel like it's going to stretch and grow, so I'm going to go down to a 4.5mm needle, and I'm hoping then that should fit me. So yeah, I'm going to cast on now. I'm going to do the ribbed cuff in the red and orange bamboo merino blend, and then the rest of the mitten in the yarn that we spun together. I'm going to knit these probably on and off over the next couple of days, so I will film on and off over the next couple of days, and then I'll come back to you and we'll have a chat once they're finished being knit. So I just got back from a really lovely breakfast and coffee and a chat with Emily from Emily Knits podcast. I'll link her down below. And whilst I was there, we did a bit of knitting and I actually finished my second mitten. But before I show you my finished mittens, I just want to explain a little bit what's happened in the interim since I last filmed. So I last filmed 2 days ago, and yesterday I felt pretty rubbish. So although I was knitting on the mittens, I just really did not want to film myself because I felt so unwell. So I didn't get as much footage of me knitting the mittens as I'd like. The other thing is that I didn't like how the mittens were looking, so I didn't like the broken rib, how that was looking. I also didn't like the contrast cuff. I felt that the colour that I'd used for the contrast cuff, that orangey red, was too saturated for the really desaturated, dusty, grey pink colour that the yarn, the handspun yarn that we spun together, that I was using for the bulk of the mittens, turned out. So what I did is I frogged that and I got rid of that contrast cuff completely and knitted them up in just the yarn that we spun together. And I think they've come out so beautifully. I also didn't end up doing the broken rib pattern, but I did follow the rest of the pattern for the Marlene's knits. I just did stockinette rather than that broken rib pattern. So I'll just put these mittens on and we'll do a big reveal. Ta-da! So here are the finished mittens. Aren't they just beautiful? Look, I'll bring this right up to the camera so you can see how beautifully that handspun yarn knitted up, and I'm quite surprised at how even it came out. There's not really any obviously thicker or thinner bits. When I was knitting it, it didn't feel like handspun, it didn't feel thick and thin. I was just, I'm so pleased with how far my spinning's come in just like 2.5 weeks, nearly 3 weeks. It's just, yeah, I'm so pleased with it. The other thing you might notice is, if it wants to focus, I've got a little loop of yarn hanging out the top and a little bit of a hole here. So I've woven in all of my ends apart from the 2 at the very top, and that's because on my first mitten, which I think is this one, I actually did it 3 rows shorter than the second mitten because I wanted to see which one fit better and the slightly longer hand fits better. So I'm going to frog this one back add an extra 3 rows in and then do the decreases, and then I'll weave in these ends. And then they need blocking because they are slightly too tight, so I'm hoping to get a little bit more width and a little bit more length on the cuff from the blocking. However, I want this vlog to go up tomorrow, so I'm not going to be able to show you them blocking or show you them completely finished off. But what I will do is show these and talk about these a little bit in my monthly podcast in January. If you're new to the channel, I do a monthly podcast, usually at the start of every month when I can, sometimes like health dependent. So I do this monthly podcast where I talk about my crochet, knitting and other craft projects. I talk about sort of my design process and my thinking and sort of where I'm up to, and a bit of a show and tell. Kind of like a standard knitting podcast if you've ever watched those before. So what I'll do is I'll show the finished gloves, blocked, finished completely, all in that video. And yeah, I'm really pleased with this, and these are so warm. This yarn, this fibre is a dream. If you're a spinner, I definitely recommend giving this fibre a go. Honestly, these gloves are like so warm, you would not believe. My hands are not getting cold the next time it snows. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this spinning vlog. I'm going to be doing some more spinning vlogs in the new year, and I'll just grab you the spinning project that I started whilst I've been knitting these. I'm not vlogging this one, but I am really excited about it. So I've been spinning up a sweater's quantity worth of a Polworth blend from World of Wool again, called Rhubarb Crumble. Let's see if this will focus. Isn't it just dreamy? So it's that cream natural Polworth colour with a whole bunch of these pink and orange and purple neps in it. Oh, it's just divine, and it's so lovely to spin. I really like the Polworth because it's soft, a bit like the alpaca blend, but it's not slippery like a merino, like I've got good control, but it's also lovely and smooth and soft. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the Polworth, and I'm really enjoyed the alpaca blend as well. So yeah, if you want to keep updated on this spinning project, I will talk about it in my podcast as well, but I'm not vlogging this one. I am planning some more spinning vlogs in the new year. I'd like to have a go at making a fractal yarn and learning how to spin across the top. I'd like to learn long draw. I'd like to do another sweater's quantity. So I am planning a lot of spinning vlogs for 2025. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this vlog, and hopefully I'll see you again on another video.